Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our Zoom gathering. Welcome to our Thursday evening Louise Hay self-healing class. This class or this gathering is going to talk about our power to choose peace and how to stop taking the bait when it feels like the world is trying to pull us into reaction or into upset or drama. So that's tonight's lesson. Don't bite the hook. And that was an image that came to me many years ago when I was teaching a class. I had this, as I was explaining something, I thought, it's this like there's these fish hooks in front of you, and you can just leave them alone. You don't have to chomp on every one of them. You don't have to lift them up. You can let them float right by you. So that image has stayed with me for a long time, many years. And I jotted it down so I would have it for this evening. So let's begin. And let's start with a deep breath. In and out. And again. Just let everything soften for a moment. Relax. If you've had a full day, if you're carrying any tension, just gently say to yourself, I can let it all go right now. Let your shoulders relax, drop down. Let your breathing be slow and easy. And now picture this with me. There's a hook floating in front of you. Maybe it looks like a memory. Maybe it's someone's words. Maybe it's something that someone said, a headline, a family situation, a hook. But there it is. It's baited. It's just waiting for you to bite. Now hear these words. You don't have to. Hear these words again. You don't have to bite. You don't have to react. You don't have to take the bait. You can choose peace. So let this wash over you. I don't have to. I don't have to take the bait. I don't have to bite. I can choose peace. You noticed it though, and you didn't bite. Again, you said, I don't have to go there. I released I released the need to pick up the hook. This gathering this evening is about that choice, about learning how to stop biting on the hook. So let's take one more step together, one more breath. And let's gently affirm, I'm safe. I am centered. I am powerful. I choose peace on purpose. I want to take you back to a moment from my early days in teaching. It was one of those quiet, reflective times, and as I said before, out of the blue, I did get a visual of fish hooks all in front of me. Some were shiny, some looked a little rusty, but all of them had the bait on them. Opinions, criticisms, old stories, unfinished business. And in that moment, I realized, I had a realization that changed the way I saw these things. I thought, I don't have to look at these. I don't have to lift a single one of them. They're not mine. I don't have to respond to them. I don't have to explain anything. I don't have to bite. So that was a moment that Spirit gave me and gives you. It's a little internal click of understanding. Because until then, like most people, I thought, if someone challenges me, well, then watch out. Or at that time, if something hooks me, I felt I had to respond. Maybe I felt it in those days that I had to get the last word. But no, the day when that happened, I saw these fish hooks. I had a shift. I thought, I don't have to touch them. And I realized in this visual that I could just let it be there and let it float on by. I could notice it like I might notice something in a meditation, and I would let that just go on by also. But I didn't need to jump onto it. I didn't need to bite. I didn't need to give it any energy. And that's what we're talking about today. Because let's face it, the world is full of, let's call it bait. There's all kinds of things that we could get upset about. So we acknowledge that. You can look at your phone messages before you even get out of bed, before you have breakfast. There'll be something right there that you can react to. There'll be something on the TV. As soon as you turn it on, there will be a hook that will be in your inbox before you finish your coffee. Um, it's there when someone makes a passive aggressive remark or a comment at work. The hook is there when a friend of yours reposts something on social media and you know it isn't true. It's there and it's crafted to stir the pot. And you scroll on down on your device, your iPad or your phone or whatever it is. You scroll by these inflammatory headlines and boom, there's a hook again. It's like, gotcha. And then you're off to the races when you react to it, right? At least that's what can happen. Uh, so you hear something on the news too. Then you feel like, there you feel reacting again. It's a hook. Or you catch yourself reacting to something else. More hooks, lots of hooks. Someone says something in a tone to you that pushes your childhood wounds. Hooked again. You start rehearsing your responses in your head. And guess what? You've already bitten the hook. So here's the part that most people miss. Every single hook, and it's easy to get hooked, but every single hook wants one thing, just one thing. It wants attention. It wants your attention. And because remember, wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. Remember that. Wherever my attention goes, my energy flows. Or you could say, wherever my attention goes, my energy will follow. It doesn't matter. And so we've got to start catching ourselves. In the beginning, you could say, oh my goodness, this is like herding cats. I'm reacting to everything. So it's a bit of a challenge getting a handle on this, but it might help you, as it helped me years ago, to start seeing these things. Okay, these are hooks, and I can chomp onto them, or I can just let them be, let them lay. Louise Hay said it's all very simple, but it does require something from us. That's why in this work, especially for metaphysicians, we need to talk about spiritual discernment. We have to be able to pause and say, hold on, wait a second. Is this worthy of a response at all? Is this worthy of my energy? Or is this just another hook? See, most of that stuff, if you just see it there and you acknowledge it and let it go. Sometimes, of course, you're going to actively do a denial and a release. It reminds me of the tale I say in many of the classes. You've heard it so many times, the Cherokee parable. Here once more, but very briefly, the grandfather tells the grandson that there are two wolves inside of every person, and they're in a fight. One wolf is very angry, reactive, vengeful. And then there's the other one that's peaceful, loving, and wise. And the boy asks, which one wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed. So the story has lasted so long for a reason, because it's true. When you feed your reactions, you strengthen them. When you react, when you give into the bait, you lose your centeredness, you lose your center. That's why tonight we're saying it out loud and we're making it a practice. Don't bite the hook. What hook am I talking about? I'm talking about any hook. Now you might really want to. You might want to get the first word, the second word, and the last word. You might feel completely justified. But remember this, taking the bait is not the same thing as taking your power. And there's no spiritual prize for being constantly upset. We don't win in the game of life when we are reacting to life. So let's bring in a little spiritual wisdom. I'm going to bring it in from the AA book, Big Book, this evening. One of the most powerful lines in all the recovery literature says this: acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. I can find no serenity until I can accept life on life's terms. Now, that doesn't mean we don't act. It doesn't mean we don't care. It means we choose to respond from a place of connection, from a place of peace, not from a place of panic or brokenness. We choose to respond from clarity, not from chaos. In metaphysical language, this is what we call being the guardian at the gate. Or Dr. Holmes would say, there's power for good in the universe. You can use it. You're the one who's wielding the power in your own life. You're the one who's the guardian at the gate. That's the part of you that stands at the threshold of reaction and asks, is this mine to deal with? Is this mine to engage? Is this a hook or is this the truth? Do I want to give my power away to this? That's a yes or a no. And if you're living consciously, that moment, that pause where you choose. I don't have to react to it. I don't have to touch it. Is everything. That's if you're living consciously. We'll talk more this evening on how to build that pause and how to spot the hook and how to gently step back from what no longer deserves your energy or your attention. Because in this teaching, we believe in freedom of response. And that freedom means you get to choose. And as I was putting my notes together for this evening, I thought, well, sometimes you feel just like reacting or blowing off steam, and reacting can give you a little jolt, little emotional rush, can make you feel alive in the moment, especially if we think or feel we're right, or if the situation seems unfair. But then always comes a question, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Most of us have come to realize that we're not here to straighten out the world. Hopefully you've come to that by now. We're not here to straighten out other people. There's plenty of work to do inside. So most people in the teaching realize that we have a lot to do with ourselves. We have this great executive power that Ernest Holmes spoke of, this power within us. It's one of the things that distinguishes us from, say, the animals in the forest. We have the ability to pause. We have the ability to reflect, to name things, to create things. We don't have to go on instinct. We can actually stop. We can take a breath, and we can get centered, and we can choose a different response. In AA, drawing from the big book again, in recovery circles, they have a saying, think the drink through. I'm sure the suggestion would be, sure, anybody can drink when there's a problem. Anyone can react. And sometimes it's probably very tempting to drink or react. But if you keep going with the reaction, what's the real cost? What are you trading away for that brief satisfaction? So for the alcoholic, they'll say, think the drink through. Is it really worth it to you to give up your sobriety? And the same thing is true here. Learn to act intelligently rather than reacting. Because if we keep going with the reaction again, what's the real cost? If we keep blowing off steam or taking that drink, and that's when we come back to this idea. There's a reason I call these moments that I'm describing this evening as hooks, because sometimes reacting feels good. There's a little thrill of adrenaline when you feel offended, when you react, a little charge when you want to correct someone. And somewhere in the background, your nervous system's saying, if I don't react like I'm being walked all over on, who will I be? And see, all of that's old programming. That's the bait. But here's the truth. You are not your reaction. You are not your trauma. You are not any of the stuff that triggers you. You are not even your outrage. But it's important to remember that we are always more than any label. You are something much greater than any and all of this. You are a living, evolving, spiritual being, and you're allowed to say no to the hook. No, no, thank you. I'm not interested in biting the hook today. No, 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 in your mind, to any of these things. So when people are sharing and they're dumping or they're saying whatever they want to say or things come in, the suggestion tonight is I release the need for it. I don't even acknowledge it. Whatever you have to do to take care of yourself. So let's go back to Louise, where she said, I'm willing to release the need to be disturbed. That's great. Say that to yourself. I'm willing to release the need in me, right? The need to be disturbed. Please let that sink in. Willing to release the need to be disturbed by anything. Because Louise is pointing to something subtle here. Because for many, there's almost a secret comfort in being upset. A lot of people live with this whole thing of reaction, being upset. And they get an identity from being offended and upset. And sometimes it might make them feel alive. It creates a false sense of power because at least they're doing something with emotion. But the real power is not in being reactive. It's not in being upset. The real power will be found when you are calm and when you are clear. The real power comes when you're coming from a place of connection with Source, when you know that you're one with the One, where you have that inner clarity. So again, the real power comes from being clear, realizing I'm one with the One. I'm a center of God activity. The real power comes from choosing peace and coming from that place and choosing to see the good deliberately, choosing to see the good on purpose. This is where science of mind gives us such powerful foundation. Ernest Holmes wrote, suffering is not God ordained. Again, simple line. Suffering is not God ordained. It is the result of the misuse of the law. In other words, he's saying, we're not being punished by spirit. We're participating in a mental atmosphere that keeps recreating our discomfort. So we're putting ourselves in this situation, and most of us I know really want to stop. So again, we're not being punished ever by spirit. We're participating, we're taking the bite. We can refuse to be offended. We can release the need to touch any of that stuff. Because when we do, we're participating in a mental atmosphere that keeps recreating our discomfort. And that includes our reactions. So let's be clear. When we are reacting, we are not being mindful. That's obvious, right? Because when you're being mindful and clear of who you are and what you are, then you're not reacting. When you're reacting, we're not coming from awareness. We're not coming from a sense of deep connection. We're not coming from a sense of being connected with Source or to Source. It's a little bit like we're flying blind. We're on autopilot when we're reacting. We're grabbing the bait. We're fueled by emotion, but not necessarily by wisdom. You see, this isn't power. This is like reflexive. It's reactive. That's what Louise Hay meant when she said, I'm willing to release the need to be disturbed. I'm willing to release the need to be disturbed because when you're truly connected, you realize you don't have to prove your awakening by performing outrage or getting upset. You don't have to be offended. When you're really connected, there's very little that's going to bother you. You don't have to grab onto every hook, those fish hooks. And when you come from that place, you respond with wisdom, not from reaction, but from the certainty of knowing who and what you are. This is what the Course in Miracles means when it says, I'm never upset for the reason I think. And I can choose to see peace instead of this. I mean, I can choose to be happy instead of anything. The power is with you always. I'm never upset for the reasons I think, and I can choose to see peace instead of this, instead of anything. Because when you live from this place of connection, even just for a moment or two, what you're doing is you're reclaiming the creative power in your life and of your life. So that's not being a doormat, and that's not being passive. It's not doing nothing. It's really developing self-mastery because you're not taking the bait. You're not biting on the hook. So the next time something or someone tries to pull you out of alignment, try saying to yourself, there's the hook. I see it. I see it. I can name it. I bless that hook. I'm not going to bite on it. I release it. Because we can do these reactions, but we're becoming smarter than that as we get more involved in the teaching. Again, the animals in the forest can react, but you have a power and a presence within you that's beyond. You have such awesome and tremendous power, and this awareness, the awareness you have of this presence, is your power. And with this connection, with this knowledge, you have access to every solution. You have access to every insight and every form of true strength. Uh, your reactions could never give you what you already have. I have a little Buddha story that I want to share with you to help capture the wisdom of this evening's words and lessons. It's called The Buddha and the Angry Man. So imagine, it's very brief. The Buddha was sitting peacefully one day, surrounded by his disciples. And a man walked up and he started insulting the Buddha, if you can imagine. Every kind of nasty thing you could say to the Buddha, he said. He called the Buddha names. He said, "You're a false teacher. You're no good." He did everything he could to provoke a reaction in the Buddha. But the Buddha sat there in stillness. The Buddha didn't respond. And finally, the man was so upset, exasperated, he said, "Aren't you going to say anything? Aren't you going to say anything?" And the Buddha replied eventually with a question. If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The man paused and said, "Well, I suppose it belongs to the one who offered it." And the Buddha said, "Exactly. So if I don't accept your anger, it remains yours." Again, if I don't accept your anger, it remains yours. So that moment was very telling because we've all had someone try to hand us their anger, their drama, their bait. And too often we bite. We bite a lot. But when we remember who we are, when we stay in our peace, when we stay connected, we realize this isn't mine to carry. This gift of anger, this hook of outrage, I don't accept it. See, that's what spiritual clarity will give you. That's what spiritual clarity looks like. That's why often you'll hear me say, "I refuse to be offended." That comes from the Four Agreements. Or it takes great wisdom to understand that all circumstances and events are helpful. So when you have this knowledge, you begin to practice it. When you have the spiritual clarity, then it doesn't mean you become a passive person. It means you become very powerful, or you become powerful enough at least to stay centered in this presence, even when someone else is flailing around, going off. So as we move today or this evening into our guided practice, just carry this thought with you. The hook might be there. The bait may be tempting, but you don't have to bite. So let's take a moment to actually practice this, to build the pause that helps us see the hook and choose something higher, choose something better. Once again, I'm asking you to relax. Close your eyes a little if you want. Just relax. Let yourself feel supplied, supported, and grounded, feeling the connection beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Now let's bring our minds to a moment recently when you felt hooked. Maybe by something you saw on media or something someone said, or hooked by a worry thought that wouldn't seem to leave or wouldn't stop, that you were repeating over and over again. Don't judge it. Just notice any hooks that might be floating around. Now, imagine that moment as a fishhook suspended in front of you. It's baited. It definitely wants your attention. But now you realize you have a choice. So gently affirm to yourself, there's the hook. There it is again. There it is. I see it. I can name it. I bless it. Yes, I bless it. And I don't bite. So now take a breath and feel yourself soften even more. And let's deepen the practice with a few affirmations, each one an anchor to help you reclaim your inner power the next time life tries to bait you. I'm going to say them slowly. You can repeat them silently to yourself, or you can say them out loud. The first is, I choose peace on purpose. I choose peace on purpose. I'm not available for drama. Again, I'm not available for drama. I recognize the bait and I release it now. Again, I recognize the bait and I release it now. Whatever comes up. Another one you can say to yourself, I return to presence, or I return to the awareness of presence. I return to clarity, spiritual clarity. Again, I return to clarity. I return to the truth of who I am. I do not need to be disturbed in order to be awake. I release the need to think that way. I do not need to react in order to be relevant. I release the need to bite the hook. Now, let all of that settle in, whatever way it needs to. Let the wisdom of Louise Hay rise in your heart, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. She taught us that healing isn't just about soothing the wound. Louise taught us it's about changing the pattern that caused it. And reactivity is a pattern. But presence, being aware of this activity, this divine activity deep at the center of your being, practicing that awareness, again, it's a practice. And each time you pause, each time you breathe, each time you choose peace instead of the upset, you are doing the work. You are healing. You are rising. So let's take one more breath. And when you're ready, let's come together one more time into the heart of our teaching. Practitioners of this teaching are not weak. They're not passive. Refusing to bite the hook is not passive. It's not letting people get away with things. It's actually one of the most powerful spiritual practices you can ever learn to develop. Because the moment you can say, or you say, I don't need to be disturbed to be awake, I don't need to bite the hook to be involved, something shifts in your whole being. You begin to reclaim the most sacred form of power, the power to choose your inner state. That's what Louise Hay was all about. She didn't just teach positive affirmations so we could feel better. She taught us how to take back authority over our own lives, to stop blaming, to stop waiting, to stop biting on every emotional hook that came our way. And you can heal your life, Louise said. I don't fix problems. I fix my thinking. Then problems fix themselves. That's it. That's the work. So when you apply that to this lesson, here's how it sounds. I don't react. I return. I return to presence. I return to peace. I return to the truth of who I am. And so let's be real, there are going to be moments where it feels good to bite. It's satisfying sometimes to feel like we're standing up for something and talking about what needs to be done. But how often does it actually bring resolution? How often does it bring peace? Not often, because reaction never creates healing, only the awareness of presence. the presence. Only the awareness of that can do that. Remember what Ernest Holmes, Louise Hay's teacher, said: there's power for good in the universe, and you can use it. And we can use it by using it intelligently, by taking that pause. We can release the need to bite those hooks. So let's take this idea in mind today, the lesson. I want to open up the call. I want to hear from as many people who can share, who want to share, if you feel called to. I'd love to hear what came up for you, how we give our power away, and maybe what you're going to do so you don't chomp onto these hooks as much anymore. What clarity you gained in the process and how this message is supporting you right now. And just to leave you with a little bit of a smile, not everything needs your opinion. Some things just need your peace. So let's go with that energy. To those watching us on Facebook and YouTube and listening on Spotify and everything else, thank you for being with us. We'll see all of you soon. So now we're going to turn the cameras over to you all. So thank you. And so it is.